My guest today is acclaimed actress Kayden Brenna Tokarski, and she is known for portraying a young Julia Roberts as Martha Mitchell in the Emmy and Golden Globes nominated Starz original TV series Gaslit. Well, Kayden's notable filmography also includes Love's Fast Lane on Peacock, My Professor's Deadly Secret, and Killer in the Woods on Lifetime, as well as Apocalypse Love Story on Amazon Prime and Apple TV, and even the feature film Roswell Delirium alongside Anthony Michael Hall and Reginald Vell Johnson on Apple TV Plus and Prime Video. But Kayden is also starring in the upcoming films Curse of Vandor and its sequel with Dee Wallace, and this past February she wrapped up filming of the upcoming movie Brutin, playing the daughter of Theo Rossi. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome actress Kayden Brenna Tokarski to the show. Welcome, Kayden.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, I think you're probably the youngest guest I ever had on this show. So how old are you?
I'm 15 years old. That is so awesome.
Wow, that is awesome. And I remember seeing you for the first time in Roswell Delirium, but we're going to get into that in a moment. But how and when did you get into acting?
Yeah, I started acting 5 years ago, and it had been a dream of mine ever since I was a little girl. I would constantly, just fall in love with cinema, just watch it, and I loved everything about it. I would ask my parents every single year. I'd be like, "Please, I really want to start acting." And they were like, "This is a lot." So, no. So it was like constantly being told no, which I totally understand because it's a lot of sacrifice for them as well. And then I finally, when I was in fourth grade, I did a play and I was the lead, and my parents came and saw me. And I think that's when they were able to see the passion as I was on stage. And I just really loved that. And then I was so fortunate to see an open casting call for a PSA for this incredible organization that works to keep kids safe. And so I auditioned for it. I didn't really think anything of it. And then I got a call saying I booked it. And that's kind of how it all began.
Wow. A lot of young people do start off in commercials, but were your parents kind of worried about the dark side of Hollywood?
You know, I definitely my dad. My mom, absolutely. I mean, my parents are very protective. I think things have changed so much. So I don't think that they were worried so much about being a minor in the industry. I think my parents were just like a little hesitant based on it just being a lot on a child. And, you know, they really wanted me to understand like this is not as easy as it looks. This is hard. And also, we don't live in Los Angeles. We live an hour with traffic. It could be 3 hours from there. So, it's also a bit of a drive too.
Well, let me ask you this because, all right, if you started 5 years ago, you started right at the beginning of the pandemic. So
Yes.
were the majority of all of your auditions now, are they all self-tapes or have you ever showed up to do an audition in person?
Yeah, I have done, I would say most of my in-person auditions are callbacks. But yeah, no, it's very rare when I get to go in person. And I do love self-tapes because it's very nice to like even if I'm on vacation or, not in my house, I'm able to do it wherever I can, with a blank backdrop. However, there's something about the in-person vibes and just the energy, and you get to feel it, and you get to meet people, and there's something really magical about that. So that's one thing that you know, the drive is crazy, but I truly think it's so worth it, and I really wish that we had more opportunities in person. But I'm never going to complain about self tapes because they are so flexible. But yeah, no, it was weird. I had a few auditions in person, and then the pandemic hit, and I was like, what is this? And we never really got a pilot season back where everyone would move out to LA for like 6 months. And so there was just a lot of things that people would be describing to me, and I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And they're like, oh, that happened before COVID, and you weren't even a part of the industry at that time. It's very interesting how things changed so rapidly because of the pandemic.
Oh yeah, and now
Yeah.
self-tapes, it's always, and I've talked to actors very seasoned, experienced actors, and some of them absolutely love going in for auditions, and then they hate self tapes. And then you have those that have always done in person auditions that have fallen in love with self tapes because, and as you know, with an in person audition, it's usually one shot. But then with a
Yeah.
self tape, you can record yourself 10 times and say, yeah, that's the one I want to send in.
Well, yeah, that is the beauty of it. But I think because I was just so used to self tapes, I would do like, I mean, this was a few years ago. I would do like 20 takes for, an audition. And it's it's great, but it's also got its cons because I feel like it's very obviously as as an actor, we're all very, as actors, we're critical of ourselves, and we want it to make perfect. Um, and I think that perfection got in the way because I had the opportunity to do it as many times as I like. Nowadays, I'm like, if I don't get it within the first 5 takes, like then we'll try again in a couple hours, because I always want it to just be like very fresh, very raw. And, I feel like even like the little things that you can call mistakes are like beautiful. And I think that's something that casting directors are like, oh, that's different. It's not like perfect. Because I don't feel like there's anything such as perfect.
Well, is with the auditions, do you do one as to what they want, and then do you add a second one in a way in which you perceive it may be, or it should be for the character?
That's a great question. I think it just depends because usually, I don't try to people please at all when it comes to, obviously I'm going to listen to everything that is given to me with the breakdown, but I think when it comes to auditioning, I really just want to show them my take on the character and my take on the story. And then I think when it comes to callbacks, that's I'm surrendering everything that I have built, and now it's time for them to give me direction and let's create this character that they want. So yeah, I think it depends. I mean, sometimes for commercials, I'll do a couple different takes, maybe based on what they want, maybe something that I think could be different, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't think about that," you know. So it really just depends.
Lately, I'm getting more and more directors tell me that when they're on location and let's say they're doing a film,
Yeah.
they want the actor to do at least the first take and get it right with what the script says. Then they
Yes.
say, okay, now I want you to do it your way or your interpretation of the character. And then they choose to see what direction they want to go with or which one they like the best. And I love that with the directors because a lot of directors today do not have a very long resume.
Hmm.
So now they're kind of giving a little bit more freedom to the actor because some of the biggest directors in the world allow freedom to the actor and see what happens. It's like you said, even if you think there was a little mistake, that little mistake could actually be adding something to the character in that very moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I that's really interesting. It's so interesting how everybody has a different opinion. I follow a lot of cast directors and directors who kind of, you know, give out information and advice. And it's fascinating to watch people, say, I really like seeing multiple takes. And then there's some people that say, I don't like seeing multiple takes because we don't have time to go through all those takes. We just want one. It's very weird.
Well, let me ask you this because, with actors, they have no idea how many actors are going after a particular part.
Yeah.
So when you do get the part, it's really a major accomplishment. Now, you being young, how did you handle rejection at the beginning?
I started at 10 years old, and to me it was all about fun. I never really was critical or, upset about not booking a role. I was just like, I am having so much fun. I'm loving what I'm doing, and that's really all. But I think as I got older, kind of starting to enter adolescence and becoming a teenager, I feel like hormones changing, and then you kind of become a little bit more insecure about yourself because, all the teenage insecurities kind of creep up on you. So I think that's, probably around 12 years old is when I started to kind of question, like, am I not good enough? Like, why am I not being cast? What's going on? And, and sometimes, I'll even have those moments now. And then I always have to just remind myself that, hey, it, obviously this industry has a lot to do with your talent and your performance, but it's really about being at the right place at the right time with the right people. And so much goes into casting, and I kind of look at everything like, if it's meant to be mine, it's going to be mine. And I think that's what's helped me deal with rejection is, I feel like my path is going to lead me to wherever I'm supposed to go.
Yeah, I believe that. I think one of the best things I've ever heard was from Michael Keaton. He
Love
said,
him.
yeah, he said he changed his mindset going into auditions. He said, instead of going in and trying to get the part, I changed my mindset to go in. This is my job. I'm going to work. This is what I do.
Exactly.
And then from then on, things change. And I love the fact when people start acting at an early age and doing auditions because they understand that rejection is not a negative. It's just a part. It's that moment. There's other ones coming. But when I see actors who start acting, let's say at the age of 19, they're in their early 20s, they don't understand what the rejection actually means and they start taking it personally,
Yeah.
and then they don't know how to handle it. I love to see it when people start young because I've talked to seasoned actors now who started when they were young and they're like, oh yeah, well, rejection, yeah, whatever. Nobody don't care, doesn't bother me. It
Yeah.
happens. There'll be another part coming, blah blah blah. So I love that. But for you, you have done some very high profile commercials. You just did the brand new Red Lobster commercial with Joey Fatone. How did that all happen?
That was a crazy story, actually. And I actually haven't been able to talk about it because, yeah, I'm so glad that you asked. Thank you. Yeah, so what I was actually in between filming for Bruton in Mississippi, and the audition came about, and, I with every audition I get, I always get those goosebumps of, excitement, but I always am ready, but I never get my hopes up about anything. And, I taped the audition. It was very late at night because it had a very fast turnaround. And then a few days went by, and then I got a call back, which I was very shocked about. I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome. So I had a Zoom call back, and then I was flying back to Mississippi. And that day they wanted to do a second call back. And I was like, oh my gosh, like we had layovers, we had, just so much travel from the airport, and we ended up making it work, and I had a layover in Houston, Texas, and I did the second call back on Zoom right at the airport with all the planes taking off. You had the people on the intercom speaking while I was doing this audition, and it was bananas, and there was a million people in the Zoom as well, tons of clients with lots of different ideas. And I literally, as soon as I logged off the Zoom, and I was having so much fun too. I was like, I don't want this to stop. I was like, I can do it again if you guys want. My mom's like, we're gonna miss our flight. And I was like, sorry, one more time. And then and so we got on our plane, and then the next day I woke up. I was in Mississippi, and my agent had said I booked the Red Lobster commercial with Joey Fatone, which was even way crazier because I am such a huge fan of NSYNC, and Joey Fatone is absolutely amazing.
What was it
So it
like
was it
being
was
on
a whirlwind.
set?
Oh, it was amazing. He's probably one of the most genuine people I've ever met. He is so, and especially with someone who's so successful too, and has grown up in the public eye. I always am, I have my guard up just in case because I don't ever know if somebody's going to be, a little bit cocky. And no, he was just so funny and so silly and cool and just very nice. I mean, we sat there for hours on set, like just talking in between takes about random stuff. I mean, he even told me, I asked him, where did the name NSYNC come from? And he said it was Justin Timberlake's mom. He said that she was like, "You guys are really in sync." And they're like, "Wait, that's a really good name." And so they ended up using that for their band. Yeah, it's so crazy, right? Yeah, it was
But isn't that
awesome.
cool though to meet someone like that and then get some extra backstory information about how they made it, how things came together. And I've seen the Red Lobster commercial, so I was so when I was told that you had got that Red Lobster commercial, I thought that was so cool, and it's so funny because the Houston airport is not but just 35 minutes from where I'm at.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
It
so to
is.
know that you nailed the Red Lobster edition at the airport is so cool. But what was your first film role? And then what was it like being on an actual film set for the first time?
Yeah, that was, oh my gosh, everything that I dreamed of as a little girl was coming true, and it was the most surreal moment being on set for the first time. I This was actually filmed kind of almost in the height of the pandemic. There was not many productions going on, but like we followed all the COVID safety protocols, and it was a feature film called Apocalypse Love Story, which I mean literally just came out in April or March. It was, yeah, March. It premiered on Amazon Prime and Apple TV, and the really incredible thing about the movie was, it was a love story, and it was based on 2 10-year-olds, and I just really I never done anything like that, and I don't know, it just it felt so different to me, and I never really saw myself doing, like, a love story and, a drama kind of combined. So it was just awesome, and, the cast and crew were just so welcoming, and, understanding that it was my first time ever being the lead of a movie or ever being on set truly, and they just made it such an incredible experience. I worked with the best people, truly.
So which role did you have in which you finally had the thought and the feeling of I'm made to do this?
I would say it was that role because again, when you're dreaming as a little girl, you don't know if like this is truly your path or if this is just like a silly little dream. And I think just, being on set and working with, the other actors, and I just felt like I belonged. And I think I was always searching for that place where I belonged when I was a kid, and everything just kind of clicked. And I was like, this is something that I'm going to do for a very long time. And it just really, I've never cried so hard when we wrapped. Like I was bawling for like a week. It was very hard for me to, because you get so invested and married into this film family, and then you have to all say goodbye, and then it's like, I don't know, there's some people that you're not going to even see ever again, or you see them in like 5 years, 2 years, just a long time. But yeah, no, that was the such an incredible experience, and just made me feel even more inspired and motivated to keep going.
That is, I absolutely love that. Now there's a few things that I think that a lot of people do not know about you. So one, you also sing, but you actually reached a junior Olympian status on the 1 meter diving board. So was all of the athletics before becoming an actress?
It was. Yeah, no, it's funny because I started diving when I was 9. And I tried many different sports beforehand. I tried soccer, I tried volleyball, I mean, karate, everything, and nothing really, like, felt like it was mine. And so a friend of mine had said, "Hey, how about you try diving?" And I did gymnastics when I was a kid too, and that I think helped a lot because, I mean, there's so much tumbling and, flips in the air and all that stuff that comes with diving. And so I tried it. I was like, this is awesome. And I did it for a few years. I unfortunately took a step back a few years ago just because it's a lot of training and competing and traveling too. So I was like, I kind of had to pick between, my first love, which is acting, and diving. But the skill is still there, and I had such an incredible time. I mean, it's scary. Like, you're diving off of 16 feet platforms and doing flips, and then you have dry land. I mean, a lot of work goes into it, but making Junior Olympics on the 1 meter was very surreal for me. I was like, that is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, when I read that, I was like, wow, you never know what kind of talent they have before they become an actor. Now, I understand that you starred in the film or the series Gaslit, which aired on Starz. Uh, did you get to work directly with Julia Roberts and Sean Penn in that film?
I didn't. Unfortunately, I didn't even get to meet Julia Roberts. I wanted to meet her so badly, but we just kind of missed each other. But, I mean, she's incredible, so iconic. And I mean, the whole cast is amazing. But, I think the reason we missed each other was obviously not being in any scenes together because I was playing her younger version. But I mean, that was the first time on a really huge production. And I was just to kind of watch how everything, moved through time and space was very cool for me to witness. And, I even learned a Southern accent on the spot on set, like, because Julia was doing a little bit of a Southern accent. They're like, let's have her younger version have a little bit. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. So I learned like right on the spot. And, I had some takes where the director would feed me a line, in the accent. And then even my co-star, Jesse Bush, was amazing. And he helped tremendously just kind of really dive deep into that.
Well, yeah, because she was portraying Martha Mitchell, so you're going to
Yeah,
have that bit of an accent. But did you know what Watergate was?
I didn't. It's so interesting because I still have not learned about it in school. Like, I'm very aware of what it is because of the show, because I did my research on Martha Mitchell and Watergate, but I still haven't even learned about it. Like, and I'm going into 11th grade junior year. Yeah, no, it's crazy, and they really just show I mean, incredibly insane things that occurred during that time behind the cameras. And, Martha Mitchell is, I mean, obviously back then very political for her to step out and actually use her voice, especially as a woman too.
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but
Now, no, go ahead.
no, I just, I love how the series like captured it. I think and the limited series was, it being limited, I felt like was perfect for it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's amazing, but a lot of people don't know what Watergate is, and if they find out today, they're going to realize that it wasn't that big of a freaking deal. You
Yeah.
know, I
Yeah.
mean, you can't bring it, to bring an impeachment on a president based on something that today is so minor. It's
Yeah.
just crazy how history changes. But
For sure.
you did a feature film, Roswell Delirium, directed by Rick Bakewell, which is now being relaunched. It's a sci-fi thriller in which you play a sarcastic, mean girl type. This is where I saw you for the first time. Um, how did that role come about?
Yeah. Well, first of all, biggest honor being a part of the movie. And I am very grateful for Richard Bakewell because he's absolutely incredible. He's a lifelong friend. I actually saw him over the weekend. We had dinner together, which was awesome. But yeah, no, my team saw the breakdown for it, and it was untitled. There wasn't a lot of information about it. And so the character description was really, I mean, it was minor, like a little bit minimal, like there wasn't too much about my character. However, uh, Mean Girl caught my eye in the description, and I was like, I have never done anything like this. I had never even auditioned for a Mean Girl, and so I was like, yes, I need to do this, please. So I submitted a tape, and then a few months later, I went in for an in-person callback, which was the first time I went in person for a callback. It was so I mean, this was 2022 and nobody was really doing, I mean, callbacks. But it was the coolest experience, and I love that Rick did that because, I mean, I felt again the love kind of. I'm reminded that I'm reminded of the love that I have for this industry in certain different moments. It's always there, but there's certain things that kind of come and I'm like, that's right, yep, love this, and I totally felt that in the room. And then that night, I got a call from Rick, and actually, really funny story. My acting coach, Michelle Tomlinson, who I've been working with for 5 years, she was in Rick's first feature film, and he had told her, I think this is your client. Like, there was like a little thing back and forth, and he's like, she just booked this role. And she's like, we need to call Kayden right now. And he's like, it's been a long day. Like, I've been in person. I've seen so many kids. That's crazy. And so she's like, nope, we're calling her. And so they called me and my mom, and I literally screamed that my dad thought I had like a heart attack, and I was bouncing on the walls, like, no joke. It was the coolest thing ever. And then we got to shoot a few months later, and it was the best experience ever.
Yo, it was so funny because when I interviewed Rick about the film, I told him that it was you that became the scene stealer in the whole film because it was so
Thank you.
funny because you played this perfect narcissistic mean girl on film. Now, you said that within the script it says mean girl. So, how did you, for yourself, how did you approach the role to become the mean girl and create Becky?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I mean, Becky is so different from me. And so I really was trying to dive deep into what motivates her. And I think the biggest thing that motivates, mean girls are insecurities. And, the biggest thing with Becky is she puts other people down to make her feel better about herself. So I think to really tap into that, I truly just, I did a lot of research. I did a lot of writing as her. I even did an animal exercise, which is this was the first time I ever did that. And I chose a peacock to represent Becky because I felt like a peacock is just very confident and, has a very strong presence. And I studied a peacock and I watched the way this peacock kind of moved through time and space. And so I kind of just took all that, and I really wanted to kind of put that into Becky so that I can understand how she moves. And I mean, I watched a lot of 80s references, like that were in the film. Like, I watched the Brooke Shields commercial, the Calvin's commercial, and like even Mean Girls, because I think Rachel McAdams, even though so different from Becky, I think just watching her presence on screen, I really wanted to have something like that. But Becky has so many like comedic lines too. So I really wanted to kind of tap into that comedic timing as well.
Oh, and you nailed it because it was
Thank
so
you.
funny because here's all of these serious characters, and then
Yeah.
here you are. It causes you to stand out. So like I told Rick, I said, she's a scene stealer. I said, because it's so
Thank
funny to
you.
watch her, be Becky. But for you here you are in a film with some of the 1980s. I call them a little bit, they're kind of icons. You got
They
Anthony
are.
Michael Hall,
For sure.
Lisa Whelchel, Reginald Vell Johnson, Dee Wallace. And I will say this. I had just recently interviewed Anthony Michael Hall, and he said he was so impressed with all of the young actors on set because he goes, they came prepared. So he was very impressed with all of that. But for you, did you get any advice from some of those icons?
Oh, that's such a great question. I don't remember a specific piece of advice because I worked alongside Lisa. I didn't get to meet Reginald or Dee. and then I didn't get to meet Sam Jones. But Michael, even though Anthony Michael Hall, even though we didn't have any scenes together, he was on set because he's one of our producers. And I just remember feeling so inspired by him because every single time we walked off set, he would always be there, like giving us high fives, like, great job. I'm so proud of you guys. You guys are killing it. Like, he was like the biggest supporter of all of us. And I think that really, because, being on a set like that, it can be nerve-wracking sometimes, and just, having someone who's there and supportive and encouraging is so wonderful and so helpful. Like, he truly just made the experience, you know, even better.
I just love that because he was so complimentary of all of the young actors on set. He loved how everybody again was so prepared being there. Uh, with Roswell Delirium, there are some very, I mean, I'm gonna say there's some excellent performances in that film. For you, regardless of the role, okay, do you have a special process that you actually go through to prepare for a particular role? You just shared with how you created Becky. Did you go through the same process with some of the other roles that you've had?
It's interesting because it always varies. I always put in as much as I can to every role. I mean, I put in everything, but I think it really just depends on what my director's calling for, the tone of the movie, and who that character is. I mean, the biggest thing is understanding my relationship to the other characters, understanding, my moment before every scene, and, what is the tone of this movie. And I always try to look at the perspective of the audience, of what's going to be going through their head and what is going to be going through their mind. And I think whenever I'm playing, even like Becky, a mean girl, I always try to find in every character things that make them likable, because, obviously there's many situations where you watch a film or a TV show and you're like, I don't like that character, even if they're the antagonist. But I always try to find something that is likable about them, that could maybe make the audience smile or laugh. And so I think that's what I do with every role. And I have such a big breakdown process because I love to write down all my notes and all my thoughts. I mean, truly, when I'm reading a script, I'll read it. I mean, maybe not 50 times like Anthony Hopkins, but I'll read it so much that obviously for the lines and memorization. But while I'm reading it, there's so many different thoughts that are going through my mind, and so I'll write them down because I want to remember what did I just think that first moment that I read, not the second time I read it, but and then I'll even write diary entries in first person talking about my character and the goals and my life story, and where will I be in 5 years and where was I 5 years ago. So just the prep is so important to me because you do all of it and then you're able to get on set and then you let it go. And that's how the magic happens. And never get over rehearsed either. I used to do that when I was younger because I just thought the magic was in the dialogue, but it's not. It's
Yeah,
when you're on set and you're in the scene with the other actor.
I've told this story to other actors that I've interviewed, and we would get into the discussion for those that have been fortunate enough to be directed by Clint Eastwood.
Wow.
And,
Yeah.
and he's known as one take, maybe two, and that's it.
Love
And
that.
so he was directing Meryl Streep once,
Hmm.
and she would do multiple takes over and over and over again. So he filmed her one time and finally sat her down and showed her. And he says, "Look, I'm not looking for perfection." And
That's
from
amazing.
that point on, from what I understand, at least when he was directing, she was not doing 30, 40 takes because he was looking for realism, and that's what he was after. And I interviewed Patch Dara from Succession, and it was so funny
Wow.
because he was in Sully that Clint directed, and he laughed because he goes, "Yeah," he goes, "I heard about Clint, and I made the mistake. We did this scene, and I asked him if I could do it again, and Clint just looked at him like." you just want to waste our time. And and he goes, but he let me do it again, but I never asked again. So,
Yeah.
so it was so funny, to hear what these other directors are like. But I'm getting the feeling that a lot of directors are kind of taking that advice of what Clint does because it saves money in the end.
Yeah. Truly, it does. It saves time and, usually you get it on those first couple takes. Truly. You might not think that, but you have to trust your director and you also have to trust yourself.
That's true. Now, let me ask you this. You have a brand new upcoming film, Bruton. I understand it's a true story, and this is a pretty big role, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it truly is such a dream role and dream come true.
So,
I'm
can
super.
you tell us what the film's about?
Yeah, absolutely. Briefly, just because I always am, I'm listening to my NDAs and I always am trying to be as respectful as
Oh no, no,
possible.
I completely understand. I know projects that cannot even be mentioned at this moment, so I understand. So, if there's something you're allowed to say, feel free.
Absolutely. No, I will do. Yeah, no, Bruton, we wrapped in February in Mississippi, and it is based on a true story. It's a biopic of Brian Bruton's life. And, a little bit of background on him. I mean, it's his life story when everything kind of changed. An unfortunately tragic accident that caused him 11 years in prison. He ended up escaping, and then there was a lot of different things that occurred in the prison that I think people find very fascinating as to how those things were possible because there was just. I mean, the story is
Is it a
very
bit
extraordinary.
more like is it a bit more like Shawshank Redemption?
I haven't seen that actually. This movie is very different though. I've seen a lot of prison movies and it's I think people are going to find it super fascinating and unique. It's it's just really incredible and Vincent Grashaw, our director, is so brilliant. He really has just I mean, I can't even describe what he's done with the film. I mean, it's just amazing. And the story is ultimately yes about what happened in the prison and his story and also solitary. Brian Bruton was in for quite some time, but it's also about a father and daughter and their love and how other people that are part of your family, your friends, are affected when something like that happens. So it's funny, it's beautiful, dramatic. I mean, you have a really incredible balance of all these different layers to the film, and I think it's also heartbreaking too. And I think people will find, I think they'll walk out of the theaters or if they're watching at home feeling something, and I definitely have because I have seen a cut of the film.
Yeah, the a lot of in real life, a lot of people don't realize that when someone goes to prison, the family is serving the time with them.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it sounds like to me that has been portrayed in this new upcoming film.
Yeah, it truly has. You get to see uh, towards the end, especially, truly how much, I mean, trauma and heartbreak that my character holds because of everything that happened. I mean, there was a period of 4 years where my character Crystal didn't even see her dad, and you know, we filmed like even at a real jail, an active real jail. And, you know, I passed by so many people that had family members in prison, and it's really heartbreaking being in an environment like that. I saw kids come in there with their mom or their dad to go visit their parent, and it was hard. I mean, I remember one day on set, I walked out. We just finished filming a scene, and I had saw a little girl and a little boy and their mom going to see their dad, and I just broke down crying outside because I was obviously we had just filmed a very emotional scene, so I was already on the verge of tears. But I just especially feeling it and being in character and understanding what my character was going through, very similar to what, those kids were going through. I just felt so much empathy and heartbreak, truly. I mean, I truly, I think it's going to touch people in a lot of different ways.
It sounds like it's going to. And you said you watched prison movies. Were you watching prison movies to prepare for this role?
I actually didn't. I because I've seen so many, I didn't feel like I needed to, because the story is just written and, it's done so differently than your average prison movie. And also just having that background knowledge anyways, I think what I focused mainly was his story, and then, also my character being on a real person. And, I had a call with our director before we started filming, and I really wanted to understand what he was going for with everything, and just wanted to be on the same page with him. So yeah, research, and then obviously just taking my director's word for everything. I mean,
Wow.
I had so much trust in him.
That's awesome. I know everybody has seen Shawshank Redemption, but
Yeah.
I grew up in the day when film was done on film. And
Yes.
you're the biggest actors in the world were people like Paul Newman, Robert Redford, and Joan Crawford. The list goes on. And there's a prison movie that stars Robert Redford called Brubaker that a lot of people have never seen.
Hmm.
And it is a very intense drama. So, for those of you out there who have never seen Brubaker, you need to look it up because it's one of the forgotten gems in cinema, especially when it comes to prison movies. And it's not your normal prison movie. So, so check it out. But so, what's next for you?
Well, I start filming a new project on Sunday, so I can't say. I literally just signed the NDA like yesterday, so I can't say anything right now, but I'm very excited to share more details when I can, because I'm this is a very incredible collaboration that I will be taking a part in. So
Oh, I love that. I love that, Caden. And ladies and gentlemen, now you've got to check out the relaunch of Roswell Delirium. And you can watch it now on Apple TV Plus as well as Prime Video. And for those of you who have uh, love sci-fi, well, Roswell Delirium is based in the 1980s. It's the U.S. is hit by a wave of nuclear attacks, and after the fallout, those who remain pretend like everything is normal, even though they are all experiencing radiation poisoning. But then a young girl named Mayday tries to make contact on a series of ham radios with her father, who is in space on a shuttle mission, and instead of making contact, she receives an intergalactic distress call from space that leads her on a journey to Space Rock, the land where Area 51 once was. For the rest of the story, you'll have to watch the film. And Caden, one last question. Do you believe in UFOs?
that is such a. I've never been asked that. Oh my gosh. You know, I'm not like a firm believer in like extraterrestrial stuff. However, I am not like totally closed off to, being shown that there are, because I think that anything is possible. And I don't know, I feel like there's always weird, like crazy discoveries every day. So not totally on that opinion. However,
Yeah,
I'm open.
I'm I'm in that camp, but I feel that most of it's coming out of Area 51. So I don't
Yeah.
think we're going to have green men and weird people with eyes flying to Earth and trying to invade us. So I'm more of, yeah, the military's pulling all of this off. So that's where I lie on this. But again, ladies and gentlemen, you also not only want to check out Roswell Delirium, which is streaming right now, but be on the lookout for Caden's new film, Brutin. This sounds like it's going to be an incredible drama. And what do we need back in cinema? Real storytelling. And I think Bruton is one of those films that are going to bring back what we've always been begging for the last 5 to 6 years is real storytelling, real films, not just superhero stuff, but real film that depicts life, and this is one of those films. So be on the lookout for Bruton when it's released. And Kayden, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today. I've had fun, and I hope you did too.
I did. Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. This was wonderful.
Well, you're very welcome. And ladies and gentlemen, you can catch all of the Bond on Cinema interviews at bondoncinema.com. Check out our Prime show, also our YouTube channel, and you can listen to us on your way to work or while you're playing on Spotify, iTunes, and other channels. So again, you'll either see me at the movies or from the red carpet.
Tensions between the Soviet Union and U.S. remain at an all-time high.
We're under attack?
What is happening? Come on. Go, 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 go. Hi. Good morning. Come on, join me.
All right. Who wants to tell me what today is?
It's the 2-year anniversary of the attack.
I was scared. Everybody was.
Was that the first and only time you've been abducted?
I don't know exactly. It might not even be the first time I was taken. I don't think there's anything there I want to remember.
Overnight, she started developing alarming levels of radiation exposure.
So she's dying.
See? Down. Stay with me. No! Oh, you're killing her! Stop!
Now, your mind should be in a world of nothingness, drifting, calling home. What do you see?
Space rock.